When we laugh, we release endorphins and can relax. Interestingly, it's the opposite of the flight or fight syndrome. If I tell you something negative, right, you're going to tense up, and you won't be able to hear what I'm going to tell you afterwards. So if I say, I just took your car out and I was in an accident, you're not going to hear the rest of it, right? And that's because that's the flight or fight. It's your adrenaline. That's why people say you should slowly move up to something. You know, I took your car out, I was driving down the road, you know, you sort of... at GE, I used to work at GE, and we used to be told, when you fire someone, don't just say, you're fired. Because they won't hear, you know, we're laying off, we're going to do this, we're going to give you this package, blah, 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 we're downsizing. So you would start to say something like, you know, can I get you a cup of coffee or something? So the joke in GE was if anyone ever asked you for a cup of coffee, you know. So when you relax, you get your message across better. Isn't that interesting? If people are laughing, they're going to be relaxed and they're going to hear you more, right? So laughter opens our minds. Likewise, laughter signals a sudden spiritual insight. Sometimes when people who come to me in direction realize how foolish they've been or how they've been doing something over and over again, they laugh. They laugh at themselves. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that again. I'm doing the exact same thing. I'll tell you a story about someone who came to me, nowhere near here, excuse me. A sister who was on retreat, and she came to me and she said, now, I know that you Jesuits like to pray imaginatively, and I'm not going to do that, so don't ask me to do it. So, you know, Ignatian prayer is sort of imagining yourself in the scene with Jesus or with the apostles. And she was this great big sister, and I wasn't going to argue with her. And also, on a serious note, you know, if that's not the way she prays, that's not the way she prays. Fine. And I said, well, sister, what way do you pray? And she said, well, I start every day with the rosary, and then I make my morning offering, and then I do points for the day, and then I read the scriptures, and then I do a walk around the grounds, and then I get ready for lunch, and I do my particular examen, and then afterwards I do more points, I get ready for Mass, I do another rosary, and then I do another examen, and then I have dinner, and after dinner I make my examination and I do spiritual reading. And I thought, all right, you know, listen, if that's the way God comes to you, that's the way God comes to you. Who am I to say? There's no way of praying wrong. So she went out, and she came back the next day, and I said, how was your prayer? Very good. Well, what came to you in prayer? Well, I realized I needed to be doing a lot more. I should be working harder in my community. I should be spending more time in prayer. I should be working harder at my job. And it is what my friend David Donovan, the Boston priest, used to say is, shoulding all over yourself. S-H-O-U-L-D-I-N-G. And I said, sister, and she said, I can't pray with the imagination. Please don't ask me to pray that way. And I got this image of the woman bent over in the Gospels. Do you know that image? The woman bent over, she can't stand up. And yet I thought, why? I can't force her to pray that way. So the next day she came back. How was your prayer? Well, I should be doing more. I should be. And I went to my supervisor and I said, I really feel so sorry for this woman because she's really burdened by prayer and it feels like a burden to me. And the supervisor said, well, you know, you can't force her to pray in a certain way. So anyway, but she said, you know, maybe something will happen. So she comes back the third day. And I said, how was your prayer? Same thing. And I said, sister, I'm not going to try to make you pray a certain way. That's not my role here. But I said, can you tell me why you don't think that you can pray imaginatively? And she said, very sadly, I have no imagination. I said, really? She said, yes, I have no imagination. And she said, my spiritual director told me that. I said, you have no imagination. No, none. Do you wish you had imagination? Yes, I do. Now this came from the Holy Spirit because it didn't come from me. And I had an insight. And I said, you have no imagination. None. Really. I said, Have you ever once had a sexual fantasy in your entire life? And she smiled. And she burst out laughing. She laughed, honest to God, she laughed for about a minute. And I laughed, and laughed, and laughed, and laughed, and laughed. And you know what? It was like this release. It was almost like an exorcism. It was this freeing. She was free. She had an imagination. It was so moving. I think about it and I get goosebumps. The Spirit freed her. And I said, sister, you do have an imagination. I said, you go out and just sit on that bench that you like to sit on with Jesus. That's all you have to do. She came back and she said, Jesus, next day, Jesus and I made up for 30 years of lost time. Now, why do I tell that story? Because laughter, she just exploded in laughter, was a sign of the Spirit. You know, joy, as Pierre Teilhard de Chardin said, is the surest sign of the Holy Spirit. Right? She laughed. Finally, a final reason. Humor is fun. Let me repeat that. Humor is fun. God forbid the Catholics should have fun, huh? Oh my God, how horrible would that be? Fun, a word that you don't often hear in Catholic circles, fun is a foretaste of heaven. Right? The saints understood that, and I would bet that the man whose first miracle was to turn water into wine at a wedding feast understood the need for some high spirits in life, right? I know, that's a bad joke. To that end, I will end with 2 jokes. Why? Well, the better question now, you know, is why not? So a Jesuit priest and a Franciscan are driving to BC for a big theology conference. And they get in this big argument about liberation theology. Big argument. And they get so distracted they drive off of Com Ave and boom, they hit a telephone pole and they go straight to heaven. So the Jesuit and the Franciscan suddenly find themselves standing in front of these gates of heaven, which are covered with these big puffy white clouds. Which is true. That is in fact what it looks like. Why are you laughing? That's true. I learned that. I have 2 theology degrees. I learned that at Weston. So they're all pretty bummed out because they're dead. But they're pretty psyched because, hey, they're in heaven now and they've been working, you know, working their butts off, and now they're big reward. So suddenly the clouds part and the solid gold, not gold plate, the solid gold gates have been opened. And they stand back, and a long red carpet rolls out all the way up to the foot of the Jesuit. And out come all these Jesuit saints. Aloysius Gonzaga, Robert Bellarmine, Francis Xavier, Stanislas Kostka, Isaac Jogues, John Berkmans, they're all coming out. And the Jesuit just is amazed, and they all come up and they shake his hand. And finally, there's this beautiful music, and out comes St. Ignatius Loyola himself, the founder of the Society of Jesus. And the Jesuit can't believe it. And St. Ignatius walks up to the Jesuit on the red carpet. And he bends down and he hugs him and he says, "Thank you for being a good Jesuit. Welcome to heaven." And the Jesuit is so moved. And then there's this beautiful harp music, and this powder blue carpet with silver stripes rolls out, and out comes the Blessed Mother, who's wearing blue, which is what she wears on special occasions. Which is true. That's true. Except when she goes to Lourdes, she puts those yellow roses on her feet. She takes them out of her closet. And the Blessed Mother walks up. Of course, they all fall to their knees, and they instantly start saying the Hail Mary. Except for Mary. That's an awkward prayer for her to say. You know, Hail me, all that. You ever see the pictures of Mary with the rosary? I always think, like, what's she praying?